Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. It is going to be me and Ryan today, and we're going to be discussing this Padres 2022 draft. Going to be doing a quick recap, kind of breaking down some of these players. So if you guys did not see, Ryan and I did a video probably 2-3 weeks ago. It's about a 40-minute video going over a lot of these draft picks. Ryan, you ended up nailing the first pick in Dylan Lesko, and a guy that you were talking about as a, franchise altering move almost if he's able to return to form after Tommy John. I know you love him a lot, so I think we should just hop right into it. What do you think about Dylan Lesko? Rest of these guys in this class, how are you feeling overall?
I think I'm going to quote, I believe, Kylie McDaniel on this one. I think he does scouting for ESPN. Dylan Lesko has been seen by a lot of scouts as the best pitching prospect to come out of any draft in like 10 years. I've seen scouts put an 80 grade on his changeup already coming out of high school. The lowest you'll see on that thing is like a 70, which is just ridiculous for a high school pitch. He throws hard, already up to 99 before. His curveball is a pitch he barely even has to throw, and it's so good that it would be the best pitch for a majority of the arms in the draft. He's just a ridiculously talented pitcher. He's got flawless mechanics. He pitches with command. His changeup it could easily be one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball right now. I understand the circumstances of me saying that and like the weight behind that statement, but it's legitimately just an unbelievable pitch. So really you're taking a bet on if he can come back from Tommy John. And Tommy John isn't the boogeyman anymore. People come back from it all the time and come back a lot stronger. One of the more recent examples I'll give you is Adrian Morejon recently came back, and yeah, he's a reliever, but his stuff is still premium. He was up to 100 his last outing. It's not like he lost any juice behind his pitches. So if Dylan Lesko has a successful Tommy John surgery and he comes back with the same stuff that he did prior to the draft, you easily just had the best pick of the first round, getting him at 15. It's unbelievable value. This is a guy who could potentially be the best pitcher in baseball in the future. So that is an A-plus pick for me. I thought that was phenomenal. Best person you could have gotten in that spot. He's a 55 coming out of the draft. I think all it really takes is for him to be healthy, and you're looking at someone who's a 60 or above.
Those are big words. Those are big words saying, that he could end up being one of these really high-end arms. But it's interesting because he does fall to 15, and you bring all this stuff up about him returning to form. And maybe a lot of people are like, well, if Tommy John's not that bad, then why does he fall that far? I think a lot of it has to do with when people draft players, and I know that there's been some executives that have talked about this, but when you have guys that get drafted, a lot of people go in with the perception of, oh, I have this guy for his career rather than I have this guy for his contract. If there's long-term questions about Dylan Lesko of like, he's not going to pitch into his 30s really well, right? If you end up having him for a few years being a high-end arm, I think it's worth the risk still. So maybe it's a lot more of long-term. I mean, we see that a lot of guys after their second or third Tommy John, they're just done. They're just totally cooked. So having a Tommy John at 18 years old is concerning. It is very concerning, and that is the risk. But the upside is absolutely there. I mean, and not just you either, Ryan. It's not like it's only you that are saying these things about him, but people really like him. So you add Lesko. But what about the rest of the draft? I mean, I know that was like your big number one target, but anyone else that really catches your eye? Any guys that you're super excited about?
Well, so going into the draft based off of MLB Pipeline's rankings, the top three pitchers were Brock Porter, who, if you're a Rangers fan are watching this for some reason, congratulations. That was an amazing pick in like the third round. Dylan Lesko, who we got at 15. And then the third highest ranked pitcher was Robbie Snelling. And because he was a high school prep arm and really wanted to go to LSU, people were just going to let him slide. And the Padres, who were taking a bit of a different approach than a lot of other teams who were messing around with slot values, trying to go under slot with their earlier picks so they could go over slot with later picks. the Padres just didn't do that. They were like, we see the third best arm on the board still there at 39, well past where he should be, and we're going to take him. So you got two guys based off of MLB Pipeline's rankings that are 55s, who are, 55 and above. That's pretty rare. That's like top 100 territory right there. So at 15 and 39th overall, you took two guys who within a couple years could easily be within the top 100 based off of their current grade. So I thought that was an unbelievably good pick. And, the philosophy they came in with this draft was, you have a better bet with the guys earlier in the draft rather than the guys ranked later. So instead of trying to get a good deal on the guys who are available in like the 4th or 5th round, why not just front load that draft and then just go under slot for the rest of the draft? So, I like that strategy, especially with how this class is definitely top heavy towards the front. And they bullied a lot of other teams by just taking Lesko and Snelling with those first two picks. And then, they got Adam Mazur right after that out of Iowa. And his stuff's really good too. He's a college arm. He's not that big. He's only about 6'2", 180, which isn't that big for a pitcher, but his fastball's already up to 99. His slider is really, really good. It's legitimate plus pitch. He throws a good changeup too. So, he's got the stuff to be a power starter. At worst, be a power arm out of the bullpen. And then with their 3rd round pick at 91st overall, they got another guy who was like really following. Sorry, my voice kind of cracked there. I don't know what the hell happened. They got another guy who wasn't really supposed to be there in Henry Williams. He was ranked like 80th overall, kind of in that range, and he went all the way to 91. And the thing with that guy, because he's kind of like the least talked about of that, first 4 picks that we did. He's a big guy, 6'5", 200 pounds. And if I recall correctly, he didn't get to pitch in his senior year of college. And so you never really got to see him with his best stuff. So, the prior year, he was up to 94, 95, and he was, flashing an above average slider. He had good command, decent changeup. And then he got Tommy John surgery, which, that was in December 2021. So he's going to be out for probably until January 23, I think is when you can start throwing again, give or take. Tommy John timeline is kind of confusing sometimes. But yeah, bottom line, the reason they took him is because he's a big guy, and they're betting on the fact that if you have a big power arm, that in his his junior year, he was up to 94, 95. He gets elbow reconstruction surgery, which a lot of guys come back stronger from that. You could potentially have a guy who's, up in the 97 to 99 range when he comes back. He's got the frame, he's got the repeatable delivery, he's got a good slider. So that could potentially be another steal where, if he comes back stronger, just like Dylan Lesko has the potential to, that could be another guy who you're talking about. Oh, he's got the floor of a high-end reliever and the ceiling of a power starting pitcher. But yeah, you want to get into like the later picks as well? Kind of less to talk about there. Yeah, so from after Williams, I mean, they just went completely off the rankings. Like, they did not get anyone else that was really like ranked in any of like, Pipeline or ESPN or anything like that, or like had any like substantial like scouting reports. They took Lamar King out of Maryland. He's a catcher, pretty big guy. I think he's like 6'2", 200. So he's not like a shorter catcher. He's definitely one of like on the taller scale, but he had some late helium going up the boards. He's got a little bit of power, stuff like that. So, it could end up being a decent pick. The other two guys I want to talk about, I'm going to pull up the list right here so I don't absolutely butcher their names, but I probably will anyways. Nathan Martorella. I always called him Mortarella, so that would have been bad. And the other guy, Griffin Dorshing. So, and I apologize to either of them or their families or whoever might have seen this and just listened to me absolutely take their last names behind the shed and execute them like Old Yeller. But, they took 2 first basemen that have flashed really good power, particularly Dorshing. He hit like a 515-foot home run one time in college. And like, I think it's just like his whole career, he's flashed really good power. And I really like taking guys like that because, when you draft guys like, those like smaller shortstop types, like there's a lot of those in baseball. And a lot of those guys, like they just don't end up making the major leagues because they're like, utility infield types. And, there's so many guys like that in baseball that they just kind of get buried and become organizational depth. But, power hitters that are specifically, just hit for power, they have a little bit more of a chance to actually carve out a career. So I like those 2 picks in particular. I think those might be guys to look out for in the system. But those are really, the only people of note. Like, you got guys like Jacob Marcy, who we picked 6th. But, all these guys are really just under slots to make sure that we sign the 4 guys that we took with our first 4 picks. Really heavy on pitching. If I had to grade this draft, I'd give it an A. Maybe not an A+. I would have liked to see one of those pitchers maybe have been like a solid outfield bat, with that 2nd or 3rd round pick. But ultimately, you can't complain when you look at the level of talent he got with those first 4 picks. Taking a 55 at 39 and a 50 at 91 is definitely something to celebrate. So I'm really happy with this draft class.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a top-heavy draft class, and I like how you explain the over-slot and under-slot kind of stuff because, honestly, it had kind of always confused me a little bit, just because I've always been more of a NFL draft evaluator than MLB draft evaluator, so you don't really have the same style drafts, right? But I think you explain it well as more of a strategy of going top-heavy or going more, we're going to be consistent throughout this draft, or we're going to focus on a lot of guys to draft later that slide. And you also explained too that the Rangers actually probably did a little bit better than the Padres even, but the Padres definitely got a lot of top end talent. It is so interesting to me how you can have a guy that's like a top 3 arm go in the 3rd round because of the way that he's slotted and how teams want to pay him and stuff. That is just so wild to me.
Because I didn't really fully explain it, I'll just explain what we're talking about right now. Brock Porter was the number 1 ranked pitcher. Everyone thought he was going to go to Clemson because he just completely bottom, fell out from like where it was supposed to go. Like 11th overall is where people thought. And I think he either went in the 3rd and the 4th round to the Rangers because all of their picks, like Kumar Rocker and all the other guys they took, they were all under slots. So they had all this money saved up that they didn't have to spend on any of their other picks. And they pulled it all together and took Porter in the 3rd or 4th round and got him to sign instead of going to Clemson. So they got 1st round talent in the 4th round. So for anyone that's like kind of confused on like how slot values work and stuff like that, and why teams would underslot or overslot in certain spots, it's because of stuff like that. You never know when you're going to get an opportunity to take someone supposed to go in the top 10 in like the 4th or 5th round. And the Rangers really nailed it with that one.
Yeah, and last year we saw the Padres do it where they take Jackson Merrill first and then take James Wood, and that looks fantastic right now. So it definitely depends on what the draft kind of, the players you're targeting, where you think you're going to have them available, and, where it's worth it to get a guy that's not as good early on and then kind of get depth later. I don't know. It's very interesting how that all works, though. But, I mean, you look at all the talent that the Padres acquire in their starting rotation, this is their biggest weakness in their farm. So I absolutely love it. You brought up about the, getting an outfield option. I think a lot of that is just going to depend on, do you trade Hassel or Wood? Because if you do, then your outfield is looking really thin for the foreseeable future. And that's a lot scarier. But if those are 2 guys that are going to stay here, then maybe it's not as big of a deal because I do think that the starting pitching needed to be upgraded so desperately. Because a lot of the guys that are there right now are teenagers like Susanna, like they're not coming up soon. So I like what they did. I like that they added a couple power bats opposed to only shortstops and center fielders, small, skinny shortstops and center fielders. So it was a little bit different strategy, but I did like it overall. Final thing I'll ask you, how many of these guys in this class are going to immediately be in the Padres top 10 list or in their top 10 slots?
Based off of MLB Pipeline's rankings, the top 4 picks, most likely. Because I think at the bottom of our top 10, we have a couple 45s. Now, I don't know how the rankings are going to change necessarily, because obviously Estieri Ruiz could become, he's a 40 right now. He could easily be a 50. Yarlene Susanna could be a 50. Samuel Zavala could be a 50. Victor Acosta. But based off of how our prospects are ranked right now, we just drafted 255s and 250s. On paper right now, all 4 of those guys, Lesko, Snelling, Mazer, and Williams, would all immediately go into our top 10. I don't really know about, Lamar King or the first baseman whose name I am not going to try to say again because I'm going to say it wrong. But, those are lower end 40s, but, they could potentially be ranked higher than the guys at the very bottom of our top 30 right now. So, they could also be, featured on the list. But in terms of top 10, I think you're looking at the 4 guys we just drafted with our first 4 picks and Ethan Salas when he signs in January.
Yeah, so this is obviously a huge addition to the Padres farm system, and one that, especially in positions that are needed so badly. We talked about the pitching in the video. Oh, you really want to get Lesko. Oh, you want to, capitalize on some of these younger arms. They do that. They do a really good job. So I do think this was a good draft. I thought last year was a good draft as well. Both of, well, this one we don't really know yet, but last year's draft is looking pretty solid right now. But yeah, I think it's going to do it for today's video. So thank you guys for all listening. I think Chase and Isaac are going to be going live after the game tomorrow, but we'll be talking Padres baseball week, going over this trade deadline stuff, and really just covering anything we need. So hopefully get some more Ryan on soon. But Ryan, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking about the draft. I know people really liked it. And right as the draft came, because we posted a couple weeks before, right as it came, a lot of people went and started rewatching it like when the draft was going on. They're like, oh, look, you nailed the pick. You nailed Lesko. So props to that. But I think it's going to do it for today's video. So we will see you guys tomorrow, or we won't see you guys tomorrow, but I think Chase and Isaac will. But going to do it for today. So thank you guys, and we'll talk soon.